another live episode of I Wonder Doctor.
I'm Dr. David Rosensweet.
And I'm Joshua Rosensweet. And today we're going to talk about why your body is designed to heal itself, and yet sometimes it doesn't succeed in doing so. And one of the reasons being that it is often subjected to toxins.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we all grow up with a model that I have a strep throat, you take an antibiotic for it, the cause is the strep throat, the antibiotic gets rid of it. It's like this singular model of how people get ill. But that's not the way it works. Because if you expose 1,000 people to strep, only a small percentage of them are actually going to get a strep throat. Who's going to get it? The ones who are a little overtaxed, overtired, their immune system doesn't quite have the oomph, they've been stressed, those are the ones who are going to get it. And then when you look at this in someone in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, there's a lot of factors that have water that's gone under the bridge, so to speak. There's been a lot of issues of nutrition, issues of exercise, too much or too little, issues of inappropriate response to stress. These add up, these little hurts. And so you look at someone with a diagnosis of diabetes at the age of 45 and you think, well, that's a singular thing. No, there's been, the way I like to put it, and I've mentioned this before, I like to tell a patient that, let's pretend we had a video of your life. And we took it from the moment you were born right up till now, and an editor pressed a button and eliminated all the good stuff, all the happiness, all the fun. What would be left behind would be all the challenges: nutrition, exercise, stress, and then there's a fourth one in there, and that's the one we're talking about today. It's toxicity.
Yeah.
This is a relatively new thing. Like back in the day, let's say when we were roaming the tundra, there was toxicity. Someone could pick up a plant and not know what it was and eat it, and it could be a poisonous plant. That's a pretty rare event. Ever since the industrial age, there are so many chemicals that are harsh, and they're poisonous to us. But most of them are not strongly poisonous to us. If we get an exposure to mercury in the exhaust of a factory, or to carbon monoxide and whatever else comes out of a car tailpipe, or the herbicides and pesticides that are on the grass, or the household cleaning materials that have got all kinds of toxic stuff in there, we don't feel the individual act. It's not strong enough. It's not like arsenic. This
is a hard one to get our mind around. Like, we've gotten it around a couple key ones, generally as a society. I mean, we've come to see that smoking, that the toxins associated with smoking, most people know that that's harmful and accumulative. And if you smoke one cigarette, it's probably not the end of the world, but a lifetime's supply of them is going to have great effect. It's hard to get our mind around. Really? I've actually got to be conscious of toxins in my house, and exposure to car exhaust and all that. It feels like
it is, and it's hard to get our mind around it.
Yeah.
And you chose an interesting example there: cigarette smoking.
Yeah.
If you ask a majority of smokers, "Does cigarettes hurt you?" Most of them will be, "I don't know." But some of them will go, "Yeah, deep in my heart, I know it does. At first I feel a burn. If I smoke too many cigarettes, I start coughing. I sort of got the link."
Yeah.
But smoking, these other things we're talking about, these mini poisons, they don't give you the signal. Like if you eat a carrot that's come off of an agribusiness farm, these are these huge farms where the farming practices are really distorted, so the plants aren't healthy, so they get vulnerable to insects and weeds, so they spray weed killers and insect killers on it. Well, if you drank a glass of weed killer or insect killer, you would really feel that one. You might wind up in an emergency room, but that's not how it happens.
Right.
It was sprayed on it, it's still there, but the residues are small. So when you eat that carrot that came from a huge agribusiness farming, you don't feel it. But the amount of exposure that we have coming from the plastic bottles that people put water in, the fumes in the air, the household cleaning materials, you add all those up, and every human being on this earth, more or less, is getting exposed to a toxic load day after day after day. And the thing is, they do accumulate. And when someone comes into my office and they're 45 and they've got chronic fatigue, or they've got diabetes, or they've got heart problems, there is no pill I can give them and say, you're done now. We have to tease apart what things can they do to get better, to heal. And so we dive into nutrition, we dive into exercise, we dive into how they respond to stress. And today I'd like to dive into how do we deal with their toxic exposure. Well, some people, it's readily apparent to me when I ask them questions. Like I'll ask them a question, can you walk into a mall, a shopping mall, and hang out there? And you know, there's a certain percentage of people, and it's a significant number, that said, no, I can't do that anymore. I'll start getting sick, I'll start getting a headache. Why is that? Because there's a high concentration of dry cleaning fluids, of cleansing, to all the stuff that they use in a mall. So the chemical content of the mall air is strong enough that some people, they can't even handle it anymore. They're full up to here, and you go into a mall and then that puts you over the top.
Yeah.
Another question I ask people is, can you drink a cup of coffee at dinner time? And they'll say to me, I wouldn't dream of doing that. It would keep me up all night. Could you drink a cup of coffee at dinner time when you were 20? Oh yeah, no problem. Because what happens is they flooded their liver over the course of decades with so much stuff to handle that the liver, the 20-year-old liver could process caffeine beautifully. But the 50-year-old liver has had it up to here already, and it doesn't function as well. And so in a world that's become more and more loaded with toxic chemicals, our livers have become less and less capable of doing their great job of dismantling it. I'm giving you some examples. It's beyond the scope of this today to try and give every example. But
here's my first takeaway.
Yeah.
People come to our show presumably because they're facing, or many of them are facing, some specific ailment, and they're all different.
Yeah.
Someone might be watching because they saw our series on diabetes, and that's
Yeah.
the thing that's front and center in their lives. Or
Right.
maybe it's a heart condition, or maybe it's weight loss, or maybe it's anything. But one of the takeaways is almost no matter why they're here, one of the solutions is to start cutting back on the toxins that they're exposed to
Yeah.
on a daily basis. So where would you have the average Joe or Jane start?
Wherever their nose and their mouth lives. So for example, if you're using laundry detergent that has a perfume in it,
Yeah.
or some of these other chemicals, well, your nose is in contact with your pillowcase for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And your body's in contact with those sheets. And if they have been laundered in one of these perfumed, chemicalized laundry products, start right there.
There's got to be a certain percentage of people watching this who are going, really? That little bit of perfume that's put in my detergent, is that big a deal?
Yes. Well, it adds up over time. And it isn't just one thing. It's not just the perfume that's in the laundry detergent. It's in the dish soap. It's in your shampoo. It's in your conditioner. Whatever goes into or onto your body, or that your nose gets exposed to, that's where you've got to check out. And you know, when you start checking out, where are the smells, where are the chemicals, you're going to be amazed. So for example, there are dry cleaners, for example, who they advertise as, we don't do chemical dry cleaning. There's household, in our household, we've got our cleaning materials down to vinegar and baking soda, baking powder, as scrubbers. And you can do anything with diluted vinegar. You can clean your bathrooms. It leaves a nice odor. You can clean your kitchen counters. It's acidic, and it's really germs are afraid of this stuff.
Yeah.
And think about that. Think about the money you'd save if you didn't have 50 household cleaning products going on there, because they're all scented, they're all strong, they're all chemical. How do you think they cut grease? They got strong solvents in there. So that simplifies your life. We go in every single supermarket in the United States of America, I assert, or certainly ones in our town, advertise free and clear laundry detergent, free and clear dishwasher soap, free and clear your common dish soap. Now, it's beyond the scope of this particular show today, although I'll be happy to go into it in the future, to try and enumerate every single thing that you're using that could have chemicals in it. And you don't do this overnight. You take on a 3-year project. You go, gee, that's an interesting concept. I think I want to reduce my exposure to things that are poisonous, even if they're tiny poisons, but there's a million different interactions with them. I'm going to reduce it. So you take on a 3-year plan, and as your inventory cleans out of what you got in your house, you go replace it with vinegar, cheap, and baking powder, because it scrubs. And you get a good scrubber, a sponge with a scrubber on it, and you're in business, and you soak your pots. This comes down to the cooking utensils. This comes down to the food you're purchasing. And this is why we emphasize this oddball nutritional advice called Go Organic. All food was organic on the planet Earth up until about 50 years ago. But you have to seek it out now, and you can find it in farmers markets, you can find it in your supermarket, because agribusiness has funky farming practices that lead to weaker foods and less nutrients in it, and they've got to add the herbicides and the pesticides. How much chemical does it take to kill an insect? Tremendously strong. These things are hardy.
Yeah.
And you're eating these things. They're on your food. So this is how you do it, step by step. You don't have to rush out there. There's no acute poison there. But the number one rule in detoxification and getting rid of the toxics in your body is eliminate your exposures or reduce your exposures as best you can. Number 2, if you are not exposed to a lot of stuff, your body will have a chance to detoxify. And it'll do it automatically because it doesn't like these poisons in there. But if it's constantly facing a load, it's hard for it to go into detox mode.
Right.
It's in alarm mode all the time. But if you reduce and eliminate your exposures, simple things. Most of these toxic chemicals are fat soluble. That means you got to get them out of the fat. And how do you do that? You heat yourself up a little bit. If you take a brisk walk and you get a little sweaty, this is an ideal temperature to get this stuff. So doing decent exercise, and the more you sweat, I mean, you've heard of people going to saunas. Why do they do that? Because it's fun. But they're also doing it because it's an ancient health practice, because they know that one of your toxic eliminating systems is when you sweat. And then here's a simple one given to me by a medical doctor who's one of those genius doctors. He told me this 30 years ago. He said a common do-it-yourself detoxifier is get one of those radiant heater, the mobile kind, that they look like the old steam heaters, so they're circulating something inside of them. Stick it in a bathroom, turn the heat on to high. That bathroom's going to get up to about 104 plus or minus. You're going to sweat. And sweat eliminates a tremendous amount. It's called the third kidney in medicine. Now, you want to be cautious if you're someone who's ill. Don't go over the top. Check out what 5 minutes of sweating is like and see how you feel in the next 4 hours. If you feel funky and you're having a detox reaction, that word, I don't like it, because it means you push yourself too far. When you're eliminating these toxins, you should not get sick. You should not. It should be, maybe you get a little uncomfortable because as you mobilize these chemicals, they don't feel good. But if you feel a little sick and you're going, God, this is hard, you've gone too far. So like anything else in medicine, inch by inch, molecule by molecule. See what a 5-minute walk does for you out in the heat. In Florida, for example, you're going to sweat in the Florida summertime. And if you come back and the next day you feel good, and I'm saying the next day, just know you've tolerated 5 minutes of sweating. Maybe the next day you try 10 minutes of sweating.
I'm listening to this, and I'm imagining I'm in the audience, and I'm going, my goodness, this is not a sexy topic, and this is not a simple fix. And frequently when I go looking for information, I'm hoping for someone to hand me something that if I just do this thing, take this special thing, I'll be miraculously healed. And I don't know why to bring it up other than it's kind of a truth for me. I hope that people listen to this and go, this is basic. And they may have even heard it once or twice before. But it's not about some miracle cure most of the time in life. It's about these kinds of simple steps we can all take. And the effects aren't immediate, right, usually.
Right.
And they're not miraculous. It's not like I wake up tomorrow and I'm better. My diabetes is gone.
Right.
So it's kind of invisible, and it
That's
takes
right.
forethought. And you really have to be thinking
Yeah.
on your 10 or your 20 or your 50-year plan to care sometimes. But what matters more than the 10 or the 20 or the 50-year plan, really? And how do we or anyone inspire actual change so that they've made it through these 16 minutes, they're still listening to us? And
Hello
somebody
out
out
there.
there is going, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm not just going to listen. I'm going to start making some toxic exposure reduction changes in my own life. And they're going through their own internal list. I know what mine are. Mine is blank. I'm going to cut it. Right? So I don't know why I
Well, you're
went down
naming
this
the
other.
most important challenge in healing.
Yeah.
It's getting the understanding and implementing. And
Yeah.
people are busy, and you want something that has immediate results. But I'll tell you, most every illness that is really plaguing this society, it took decades and decades and decades to develop. And instead of having one big cause, it had thousands and thousands of causes. Why
Yeah.
I like that video of your life analogy. Press the button, get rid of the good stuff, all the thousands and thousands of nutritional indiscretions, toxic exposures, times you didn't exercise or you exercised too harshly and intensely, and then the elephant in most people's room, when you had a dysfunctional response to the stress in your mind or your life.
Yeah.
They add up. And so anyone, let's say you encounter, and I mean I see this all the time, you encounter a patient who's 50 years old and they've developed a cancer. And it's a shocker.
Yeah.
And then what they don't understand is that it took them 10, 20, 30 years to develop that cancer. Their immune system had to be knocked off of kilter. Their energy system had to be knocked off of kilter. We have a lot of protective mechanisms against cancer. That cancer genetic change had to be inaugurated somewhere along the line. Something had to talk to our genes in a harsh way. That's a metaphorical way of saying that something caused a genetic change. What was the gene? Why was the gene trying to change? It was trying to get away from something that was harsh to it. That's why it changed. Do that with a population of 1 million mosquitoes or fruit flies. Expose them to something harsh, and some of them are going to die, and some of them are going to live. And it's the ones who are able to genetically adapt and make a change away from whatever poison you exposed them to. They're going to carry on. These things are ultimately they're understandable. So sorry to get too far afield there, but anyone who is ill, it's usually taken decades to develop. And the great news is the healing, instead of going downhill and getting worse and worse and worse, the healing is within the power of everybody. And it's a slow, careful, sometimes guided with special tools from health professionals. It's a slow recovery, but once someone who's seriously ill starts improving a little bit, they get inspired and they're willing to do the 5-year plan. And you talk to anyone who's been chronically ill that have really taken it on, they got a lot of things going on in their day-to-day life that are changes that lead towards their healing rather than they're continuing that illness. And one of them is reduce your exposure to the toxins, and then at the right point start detoxifying. There's a lot of tricks to do that. I mean, there are people who have healed cancers. There's one in our family, you know this very well, that one of the aspects after she did the original cancer treatment of chemotherapy, very important for her. Then when she was in the recovery phase, one of the things that she went on was a major detoxification program. And one of the things that she does is 2 coffee enemas a day. Why coffee enemas? Does that sound mystical? Well, I'll tell you, it's one of the most cleansing and supports of the liver that is out there. And how long has she been doing that? 6 years, something like that? And why is she doing that? Because people have healed pancreatic cancer using that plus another technique. So it's not a fool around business. Detoxification can make a major difference in the healing process. We've opened up a big topic here today.
Yeah.
And I'd really wish I could address your question. I want to return to it because you're really saying, how in the world do you implement that stuff? I'll tell you who implements it, who doesn't have such a big problem. People who've gotten ill and they realize, and they start learning and they start reading and they start learning about what they have to do to turn the corner. They pick up on this stuff, one thing by another by another. They make a nutritional change. They make an exercise change. They acquire some information tools around how they're responding to the stress in their life, and they detoxify. They do it. They get it.
You're saying the people who've hit some sort of rock bottom,
Yeah,
some sort of
and they
bottom
start
for
looking in the internet.
Yeah.
And they start tuning into blogs of how are people curing the illness that they did, and they're hearing these testimonials. Well, I increased my exercise. Another testimonial, well, I really got into detoxification. Most testimonials, I did all of it. Emotions, mind, chemicals, nutrition, supplementation, exercise. So get into all of it. And the good news is if you get into all of it and you integrate some, you know us, we're a one thing at a time type approach to things, so we don't stress yourself in the process. That's the last thing I want to do with a patient.
Or have it be so lacking in fun that it's just not sustainable year after year.
Yeah. And in the world of detoxification, your household expenses cheapen. So that's worth something right there. Because when you go through someone's house, like there are health coaches and nutritionists and others that they want to do a house call. And they walk through someone's house and they point out, there's the laundry detergent, there's the floor cleaning wax, there's the wall cleaning stuff, there's the toilet cleaning stuff, there's the thing you throw in your dryer that stinks, pardon me. And they're pointing out all this stuff where this person's, it's like shocking to see how many chemicals we're exposed to. Then they open up the refrigerator. So, introduction to detoxification. The main thing I want to say is it's worth doing, folks. It's a good thing to reduce your exposures. And for those of you who are ill, it's important that you reduce your exposures. It's not going to carry the whole thing for you.
Yeah.
But it's going to do, I mean, one principle in ancient medicine was if someone comes in with 5 javelins in them, stuck in them, the very first thing the doctor does is they remove the javelins. Crazy analogy, but it's the same thing when someone's ill. The very first thing someone who's attentive to the healing process suggests is remove the stuff that's bad.
Yeah.
And these chemicals are not okay.
Got it. All right. Well, there we go. Short and sweet.
A nice short and sweet answer.
We had a couple good questions this week.
Yeah.
I'd like to get to those if
Sure.
you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Trish. She's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And she said, since I hit my 40s, my muscles have started to become marshmallowy. Working out only sort of helps. What more should I be doing?
Big one, Trish. Big, important general question. Muscle strength, muscle size, depends on several things, but 2 big ones. One of the big ones is, you're doing it, Trish, it's proper exercise. Huge.
Yeah.
One of the most important things anyone can do for their health forever is proper amount of exercise. Not too much, not too little. Not too little is the usual error out there.
Yeah.
Big one. Congratulations. Keep it going. I keep it going. And the other big one is hormones. A special group of hormones called muscles.
What?
Called...
I thought I was about to learn something real new.
Yeah, right, that would be. A special group of hormones called androgens.
Yeah.
And the queen of the androgens, there's several androgens, the queen of the androgens is testosterone. What? Testosterone in women? Well, a lot of women do know.
Yeah.
that testosterone is a crucial hormone for women. And I can tell you this, we do very, very sophisticated, important hormone testing. Because one of the things I paid a lot of attention to is menopause and hormones. And I can tell you that some women enter the perimenopause just before their periods stop, or they enter early menopause after their periods have stopped. And some of them have decent androgens, testosterone and DHEA, the two biggest ones. A lot don't. They've already worn that system down. But by 3 years after that last period, almost every single woman has got tanked androgens, as low as their estrogen and progesterone at that time.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. Ever walk on a beach and look at the older people? Look at their thighs. Look at their legs if they're not overweight. You're going to see thinness. Like, where'd that come from? They didn't used to look like that when they were in their 20s. That's called sarcopenia. It has a medical name. It's loss of muscle mass. And the two principal reasons are insufficient and inappropriate exercise and loss of androgens.
Yeah.
And you're in your 40s. And here's you may still be having periods, Trish. And your mom's best friend in Ann Arbor was named Trish, but that was 50 years ago.
Not the same one.
Not the same one. Patricia in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
In Murray. Sorry. Little neuronal diversion there. The women in their 40s, early 40s, commonly have a very substantial androgen decline already. How'd they do that? Their ovaries put out androgens, their adrenals put out androgens. How'd they get androgen decline? The ovaries haven't given up the ghost yet. Because androgens, like estrogen, like adrenaline, like cortisol, is called into action when there's biological stress, fight or flight. Fine, they're designed to double in that function, but the amount of stress, if it's significant and your tools to deal with the stress are not good, over 2 or 3 decades, you're going to constantly call on your ovaries to produce extra androgens. One of the earliest things I see in women in perimenopause is markedly depleted androgens. Because they're luxuries. Who needs libido when you're being threatened by a tiger?
So if a woman is low on androgen, she's low on testosterone, is this something she recovers internally, personally?
Unlikely. By the time there's been a lot of stress that has reduced those androgens,
Yeah.
and in your forteries, your ovaries are declining.
Yeah.
It's unlikely that they're going to revive. It's time to see a bioidentical hormone specialist, a physician or nurse practitioner that has taken on this subject, because they're the ones who are going to know enough that these androgens do decline and it's time to replenish them. And it's a very exacting thing that you want to do. You want to get right. If you read our book, Happy Healthy Hormones, we address androgens, but marshmallowy, this is one of the most common complaints that I see in a newly perimenopausal or menopausal woman that's come to my office. She'll point to her triceps area and she'll point out what once was muscle is flab. She's lost actual triceps muscle.
Yeah.
She's lost thigh muscle, she's lost calf muscles, but the most visibly apparent one is the loss of the triceps. And that muscle was lost. And so get thee to thy androgen prescriber, because it's a big deal. And when you look at women in their 70s and 80s, some of them are using canes, some of them are using walkers, some of them in wheelchairs. You don't often see the ones with the walkers and wheelchairs because they're often in assisted living facilities. Why? Because they can't walk very well. And the other reason is, especially for women, is they can't control their bladders. So they're wearing adult diapers. And this is how women lose the ability to stay at home and have to get in assisted living facilities. And why? Because one of the reasons why the muscle that holds up the bladder, it's a muscle, one of the most important muscles in anyone's body, it's lost muscle mass too. So the bladder gets flappy, and along with the vaginal changes from low estrogens, this is how women wind up in adult diapers.
So
Why
just
am I
to
saying this?
Sorry, just to connect the dots most directly, women, like men, go low on testosterone.
Yeah, and DHEA.
It matters.
Yeah.
They lose muscles,
Yeah.
and they can do something about it, and that's go to a menopause specialist who will give them, when it's appropriate, DHEA and testosterone.
And if you want to find someone that is really knowledgeable in this area, go to our menopausemethod.com website and find a doc, because we've trained a lot of doctors in this. But the main thing is, Trish, it's common. Women and men are living longer than others, longer than ever. Longer than other what? Elephants? This is a neuronal day for
both
your
of
dad.
us.
It's not a big deal. Anyone who's delved into this topic sees what the issues are, and of course this has been going on for a long time. This is not brand new stuff. When I was in medical school, and in my senior medical year, we were given a lecture by a gerontologist. This is someone who specializes in aging. And he said to our class, I can picture this as clearly as I can picture you. He said, you all are now seniors, you know 1 million diagnoses, but let me tell you what's really happening with old people. They're losing their muscles, they get unsteady on their feet, they fall onto their hips, they fracture their hips. That can be life-ending. They've got sarcopenia and osteoporosis. You want to help them with the sarcopenia and the osteoporosis, because that's what's happening to them. That's what's getting them into the big trouble. So this marshmallow is not a new thing.
Yeah.
Get thee to a hormone knowledgeable health professional.
All right, great. All right, I think we have time for one more today.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Richard from Waycross, Georgia, and he said, you said in your videos to only hold a stretch for 2 seconds. This is bad advice. People will bounce and hurt their muscles.
Ah, the world of controversy about exercise.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I injured my back by moving a boulder that's about the size of these 2 chairs to see if I could move it when I was 31.
Yeah.
And I moved that boulder, and I moved something in my low back, and it froze up, and I was in so much pain, and I was out in the country, and I was in bed for 3 days with a bedpan, because I couldn't move. I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And from that time on, I said, I got to solve this one. And because I couldn't move in bed, and I had a couple weeks in bed, a friend of mine had given me a book on yoga, and I looked at all these yoga postures, and I thought, this is going to help me.
Yeah.
And so I've been interested in stretching for all that time. That's a long time. And I've met up with many different disciplines and body workers and massage therapists and Rolfers and Heller workers and chiropractors and osteopaths. I've had a tremendous interest in this, and I've been the most free of back pain in the last 3 years. Free enough to play racquetball with you and my granddaughters 3 times last week.
Yeah.
And it took me all the time of learning from so many people until I ran across what I consider to be the world master, whose mastery is in stretching. And he pointed out to me something that was so obvious because I had learned it in medical school, that if you stretch a muscle, within a couple seconds, microseconds, it's going to send a signal to the opposite muscle that controls, like if you stretch this front thigh muscle, it's going to send a signal to your back thigh muscle that we're stretched, so let's stabilize, so the back thigh muscle is going to contract. That'll help the stabilization.
Yeah.
And it's a proprioceptive reflex. And Aaron Mattis, we have videos, we had the privilege of interviewing
This
Aaron
must
Mattis.
be what he saw.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so Aaron said to me when he first saw me, I said, Aaron, I've been stretching for years. I'd heard about Aaron Mattis. You name royalty around this world. You name the Silicon Valley, the biggest names that you can possibly think of. you name high-level politicians and baseball players and athletes. Aaron
World's
is
most
working.
famous tennis players.
Yes,
Goes on and on and on.
Yes, he has treated 1,000 Olympic medal winners. This beautiful, amazing human being, Aaron Mattis, is well known by those who know how to find him.
Yeah.
And sports professionals. And he said to me when he was first working with my back, he said, now here's what you got to remember. When you do a stretch, go into the stretch, hold it for 2 seconds, come out of the stretch. Because if you stay in it longer, you're going to trigger the proprioceptive reflex and you're going to get yourself in an injury position. Okay, well, there's a theory. That's different. You know, a lot of stretching methods, they say maintain the stretch for a minute or two.
Yeah.
And, well, I can tell you this for sure. When I finally, after all the yoga, all the stretching I did, and I love stretching, that I've done all my life, when Aaron taught me how to do this, and now I do a routine 3 days a week of Aaron, and before every single racquetball, I do Aaron's stretching routine. I hold it for 2 seconds, and my back is in the best shape it's ever been in. So no one can convince me otherwise. Now, you know, we're all open to discussion, but I want to give you my best shot, Richard. And so I'm going to state to you and to our audience, check it out. Find out what's right for you. But I side with Aaron Mattis, this master of stretching. M-A-T-T-E-S. He's got a website. He's got books. To me, he's the grand master, and I think the athletes think he's the grand master too.
Richard does have one good point, and that is that it is important not to bounce.
Yes.
There's a little bit of a misnomer there that you have to bounce if you go for 2 seconds. You don't.
Oh,
it is
no.
always appropriate
It's
to
always
not
gradual
bounce.
in.
Yeah.
Feel the stretch. My attention is when the muscles and ligaments that are being stretched right now. Yeah, thank you. I think Richard is correct about that bounce. A bounce is too jerky.
Yeah.
You're treating, if you look under a microscope at a ligament or a muscle that you're bouncing, you're jerking, you're going to see injury. We're not designed to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with Richard all the way there, and sorry, it is bad advice to bounce and to jerk.
Yeah.
Right on. But the 2 second stretching is a gradual, slow, I feel the stretch, 1,000, 2,000, I gradually work my way out of it.
Yeah.
And not only that, when you pay that close of attention, you're actually feeling what's being stretched. It's a pleasure. It's fun. It's cool. And what are you doing? You're focusing your attention on the stretch, not on the dinner you got to make or the bank you got to stop to on the way home from work or what you didn't do at work that day. You're focusing your attention on the muscle. And if you do that, your chance of stretching that muscle and those ligaments perfectly the way they want to be stretched, it magnifies enormously, and you're not doing herky-jerky anything.
Right.
So thank you for asking that. This is a very important thing around proper stretching.
All right. Well, we've done it again. We've used up many, many minutes. We, of course, will be back in 22 of those for our 2 o'clock segment today. Thank you for joining us.